The Cincinnati Bengals are the NFL's most overhyped team entering this season. This is a bona fide 7-on-7 squad. Yeah, you got one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL in Joe Burrow. Yeah, you got Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, the best wide receiver duo in the league. But outside of that, you suck at everything else. You got a bad offensive line. You can't run the football. Your defense got worse. You lost Trey Hendrickson, who was your best player last year. He led the NFL in sacks. You're too cheap to pay him. Then you don't even want to pay the guy who you used the first-round pick on to replace him. You just cut Germaine Pratt, who was your team's leading tackler last year. And then you expect your new defensive coordinator, Al Golden, to fix this defense, losing the two best players on it? That's unrealistic. Cam Taylor-Britt is your best corner. He was one of the worst cornerbacks in the NFL last season. And yeah, you had a few other injuries in the secondary, but when you lose a guy that had the kind of production that Trey Hendrickson has had over the last couple of years, he's a borderline Hall of Famer. You need to pay that man, because if not, your defense is going to be just as bad, or if not possibly worse, this year than what it was in 2024. And you cannot expect to win games asking Joe Burrow in this offense to play flawless football. For Joe Burrow to lead the Bengals to the playoffs again this year, he pretty much has to throw 50 touchdowns and maybe only 2 or 3 interceptions this year, which he definitely has the ability to do. But when your quarterback has to be Mr. Perfect to win, that's just not a sustainable way of being able to have success in the NFL. You lost to the Steelers last year, who had a worse quarterback situation than what you did. You've missed the playoffs 2 straight seasons when the Steelers have made it, despite having quarterback play that has been way worse than yours. You've had top 3 quarterback play out of Joe Burrow in 2024, and yet the Steelers still finished with a better record than you. And this season, what area have you improved in? Nowhere. Your offensive line is just as bad as what it's been since you drafted Joe Burrow. Yeah, you re-signed Higgins and Chase. You kept the band together. Cool, but you have a 3-man team. This is not the NBA where you have 5 players on the field at once. You have 11 players on the field. Having 3 guys taking up 44% of your cap space is not a sustainable recipe for not just being a consistent Super Bowl contender, but just being a playoff team. And there have been plenty of elite quarterbacks that have missed the playoffs due to this same exact situation, because they didn't have a good defense. They didn't have a good offensive line. They didn't have the ability to run the football. There's a reason why you struggle to close out games late in the fourth quarter, because you couldn't run time off the clock, because you didn't have the ability to. You were 3rd in the NFL in rushing yards per game. And I love Chase Brown. I think he's a really good back, but behind this offensive line that he has blocking for him up front, he's not going to have that much success. This is a air raid team, and you can't win playing air raid football in the NFL. This isn't college. If Joe Burrow has to be Mr. Perfect this year, it perfectly shows how the Bengals are not going to go that far this season. I do not see this being a playoff team this year, and I'm not hating. I have nothing against the Cincinnati Bengals, but this is a franchise that, for one, they don't draft as well as what the Ravens and the Steelers do, and 2, there are concerns about Zach Taylor. When you consistently lose games the way that the Bengals did last year, it's an indictment on the coaching. Evan McPherson, you gave him an extension before you gave T. Higgins and Jamar Chase one, and he sold you in several games. When you lose a bunch of one-possession football games, it's not just you being unlucky. Teams that consistently find ways to lose those kinds of games are poorly coached, and the teams that find ways to win those games, like Kansas City did, are well coached. So the Bengals this year, at best, you go 9-8, but I have you going anywhere between 7-10 and 8-9 at best, because you are no better this season than what you were in 2024. What has gotten better about the Bengals? Nothing. If anything, you got worse. Trey Hendrickson might not play. You don't want to pay Shamar Stewart. You want to lowball him. This is not a playoff team. And yet, Vegas has them with the 8th best odds to win it all. They're not going to go close to doing that. They're not even going to finish above the Steelers in the division this year. The Steelers are going to be better than you because outside of quarterback and wide receiver, the Steelers are better than you everywhere else. They have a better offensive line, a better defense by a landslide. The Bengals are going to disappoint for the 3rd straight season in a row. Yeah, when Joe Burrow got injured in 2023, he had that wrist injury. Cool, that was a fair excuse to use for Zach Taylor. But Mike Tomlin went to the playoffs that same exact season with Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett, and Mitchell Trubisky at quarterback. So if he can win with whoever, and yet Zach Taylor is underachieving with Joe Burrow, what makes you think, if you're a Bengals fan, that things are going to change this year when you got worse on the biggest weakness of your team last season?